to go first, Dale?
Oh, sure. Good evening, Paul and Andy.
Hi, Dale.
Nice to have you here. We're going to start with DPW and then flow right into water and then on to sewer. So we're going to start with your engineering department. Paul is another individual that gets charged out to a couple of different departments in terms of payroll. We did increase his charge out slightly for more to go to the water fund this year in anticipation of additional work for the new water treatment plant. It was a 5% switch over from general to water, so you'll see that reflected a little bit along the way, just to give you a heads up on that. In the 1440-459 line, this is where we budget for stormwater reporting. So that is staying the same approximately for 2021. Next in line is the 1620 department. This is the department line for the municipal building. So we have maintenance staff and associated personnel costs in these lines. Just overall for the general fund.
Excuse me, Dale.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Dale.
Yeah.
Any pages, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find something on my iPad. Any pages change in our book from anything being presented?
These
or what
pages,
you sent?
These pages are a summary of the detail reports that were sent earlier today. So these are the.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I got.
Yep.
I'm sorry. That's why I'm having a little trouble.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. I'll find it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Rika, it was an email that Maddie sent us at 1:34 today. It's got some attachments. I think we're on the 3rd out of 5 attachments.
I'll find them momentarily. Thank you, folks.
Okay. Generally speaking, though, overall, as we're going through, especially really the general fund, the budget essentially remained flat other than contractual raises. We did do some adjustments for the electric, unleaded, gasoline, diesel, and heat lines in accordance with past usage and current conditions. But other than that, relatively flat. Are there any lines you want to touch on in here, Paul?
I'll just read. Go ahead.
For the 1620 department?
Yeah. No, you said it. You said it well. We handed in 0 increase with the exception of what you guys altered for fuel, which is always fluctuating. So it's probably a good idea that you tick that up a little bit this year.
So the 1630 department is for the Rodriguez Operations Center. So again, we do have building maintenance, personnel costs in these lines, associated small amount for equipment, telephone and internet, electricity, heat, materials and supplies, holding steady, the same at 2020 to the 2020's budget, no increases there. And then an amount in there for repair, maintenance and repair to buildings and grounds. And in that line, you actually have a new employee getting charged to 1630, so it lowered the personnel costs.
And we're fully staffed now in maintenance, so thank you for that.
The next department is 1640. This is the central garage. So we have the employees that get charged there, along with their associated other payroll items. Equipment is budgeted at 10,000. You took out the amount for a computer. You said you will buy it this year. since there's money budgeted there for that at $12.50. Materials and supplies is holding steady at $36,000 for the budget. Maintenance and repair, a small amount in there for that, as well as for equipment maintenance and repair. Street maintenance, vehicle parts, snow removal. These are all the parts for repairing the different vehicles. You want to touch upon that, Paul?
Sure. You'll see the, a couple of the big expenses are the street maintenance, which is the majority of the highway vehicles. And that's our largest part of the fleet. So you'll see that why that number is into the tens of thousands. Additionally, you see that the garbage trucks, the refuse vehicles that you see down there on the second line from the bottom are very expensive to maintain. Even the new ones, there's constant upkeep. The trucks are used 5 days a week for all types of trash, and we collect bulk trash every week. So it really takes its toll on the vehicles. It's what you need to offer the service. And Dale, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Gatsby standard for a sanitation Packer body vehicle is 5 years useful life for the accounting purposes.
Right.
So our newest vehicle is 4 years old, I believe. So I think next year you see, when we get to the capital later, you'll see that I'm going to start asking for sanitation vehicles to be replenished, because our older ones are creeping up on 10 years. The street lighting, you're going to also see some of the highway vehicles that are going to offset some of the costs in the capital request later. I don't want to jump too far into capital, Karen, but the two capital purchases, the larger vehicles, would be offset some of the maintenance in this line, which we asked for in 2021 capital, and that we put off, that we didn't take receipt of this year. We put them in this year's request. We didn't buy them, although they were approved last year, but we held up on COVID. But we did order the bucket truck, if you remember. That was a necessary replacement. We had to spend some money on that, unfortunately, for repair, but the new one is expected to be delivered in early 2021. We have also had a very long-term absence from Central Garage on a workman's comp issue, and that we'll see, that has caused a little uptick in the overtime for the two folks that remain at work to make up for that absence. Those are really the outliers on Central Garage.
Since we have an opportunity, you're mentioning Central Garage, that's something unique to us. I think we have a couple of new trustees. Maybe you could give us just give us a thumbnail of why Central Garage is such an important part of what you accomplish in DPW and such a benefit to the village overall.
With the exception of fire apparatus, Central Garage maintains all village rolling stock: parks, police, highway, sewer, water, building department, and administrative vehicles are all maintained here. When the scope becomes too large, which is rare, or it's a specialty type work on a larger vehicle like a Packer body, or a hydraulic issue with some of the heavy equipment that we have, like the backhoe, the loader, the dump trucks, sometimes we send that out. But they do a large part of the work here. I can't go back too far because John's been here for some time now, but I can tell you that we spend less and less money in this department every year. From like when he took over about 12 years ago, our maintenance line, fell through the floor there for vehicle maintenance. It's really twofold. Some of it is because you guys have approved the request for a lot of the newer equipment to get the folks here to use. But some of that's also because of the work with John and his staff there. They're on the internet, always getting best prices, and working with Dale's office to follow the procurement policy, which really leads to the better prices as long as we get the job done right. But yeah, Central Garage, thank you, Mayor, is definitely integral to this village's operation, all departments. And happy to stop by the operations center if you want to tour something other than the water plant.
But the water plant's so cool.
The water plant is prettier, but Central Garage is definitely a good place to check out and appreciate how much more efficient that makes things for village government, and we depend on them a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. The next department in their budget is traffic control. So we have an employee charged here, some overtime, associated longevity, electricity, materials and supplies, repair and maintenance to equipment is holding steady at the 8,000, and traffic light maintenance, we kept at 2,000. Anything to add for that one, Paul?
No, but this, so as you look through this budget, again, more for the newer trustees, you'll see names associated with the departments. That, that really just defines where the salary is drawn from, but everybody flip-flops around Public Works Department. I mean, the biggest segregation is water and then everybody else. But even there, you have highway folks working in the water department on water main breaks, for example, and such. But we really just assign the names there for budgetary purposes, but that doesn't mean that someone else in highway can't work on traffic control type work. It's really just a bookkeeping thing. And we used to, a long time ago, we used to assign people daily on which account they were working from. And it really became, and Dale can attest to this, it really became a beast at the end of the year to reconcile everybody's time, because you would constantly have to rob Peter to pay Paul at the end of the year to make the Schedule 5 lines work out. But we don't do that anymore, and it's accepted accounting standards, and it works out well, particularly when we go to do calculations for grant reimbursements and stuff like that in emergency events, which is mostly really police and DPW response.
So I'll just point out to anybody who is any members of the village board, the emails that you got today from Maddie have the breakout of salary lines with the individual names, which aren't included in what we're screen sharing right now. Just the total for the salaries for that line are up on the screen. So if you're not seeing the names up on the screen, that's because they're not up there. But we have that information for anybody who just wants to learn the names of the staff to understand where they focus a lot of their time.
Thank you, Mayor. Very good. The next department is street administration. Again, we do have certain people charged there, not necessarily where they work all the time, I guess is the appropriate thing to say. We do, when it comes to overtime though, that is based on the overtime that is actually being worked. So in that case, we do change the allocation to be appropriate for the overtime work that was completed. We have longevity, out of title, sick pay, incentive, small amount for equipment. No computers needed this year for DPW. They are all set. Telephone and internet, printing and postage. Office supplies is staying the same amount as 2020. Professional dues and meetings. Paul, have you guys been able to take advantage of some virtual training?
Yeah. Two of them were canceled, but one was not. NICOM was virtual this year. It was, obviously a lot cheaper because it was virtual, but that should be coming in. We had to pay with credit cards. I think that's on the village's credit card, but next year, hopefully, that process will all be ancient history and we'll be back to in-person training.
Yes, hopefully so.
Yeah, I think you should plan on that for 2022. But
the next department is 5110, which is our street maintenance. So again, we have a budget line for certain salaries to get charged to overtime, same longevity out of title, sick pay. We do have somebody that's receiving a health stipend, so that's included in the budget. We have an amount for part-time help, standby pay as well, which is a contractual obligation. Small amount of $5,000 in for equipment. Your heat lines, we adjusted in accordance with the actuals. These numbers show as being to budget for the year because we have encumbrances, which are then taking up the allocation for the 2020 budget. So it's not that we're going to be overexpended, it's just that we've actually encumbered the funds, so they're not expended anywhere else. Your vehicle operating expenses are holding pretty low, it seems, which is good. Materials and supplies is budgeted at the same as 2020. Maintenance and repair to buildings is at 45,000, and we raised that a little bit because of prior years and where we are this year for that line. Sorry, Paul. We leave an amount in there for equipment or truck rental. Do you want to touch on that, Paul? In the 5110?
Yeah, no, I see it. That, I believe, was the, did we rent out the, can you pull up what we rented on there?
Yeah, you should have rented out the line.
Yeah, but no, this is, I don't know what's attributable to this. Dale?
Yeah, I got to do it over here. Hang on.
Well, while she's doing that, I don't know if this is what specifically was charged to this line, but we rent out a pavement grinding machine for some patchwork that we do. We rented out a mini excavator for some work we were doing, and we rent out the screener so we can screen the street sweepings and get rid of that with an organic receiving facility, and then take out which is mostly bottles and can recyclables that get picked up by the street sweeper, and items like that. And we also sometimes rent larger vehicles out of there.
Right. Rental of planer,
Yeah,
excavator,
yeah,
concrete saw.
yeah.
Yeah,
Concrete saw for cutting the roads pre-paving.
yeah, yeah.
All those things, that type of work, but basically all right-of-way work and to help supplement our operation down on Water Street.
Mhm.
So you're keeping it at 8,000, even though the last couple of years it's been, either close to or more than twice that. I mean, I see a few years ago it was very little, so there's some variation, but you still think 8,000 for this year is the right amount?
We'll work with it. I'm trying to keep it tight, and we wanted to hand in a zero, so we got a lot done. We got caught up on a lot of things, and the big rental number, which actually isn't out of here, but the big rental number is the backhaul. We've had that now for 2 years. We used to spend 20 or 30,000 on that every year, and now we own one, so that's a good thing.
Okay.
We have a small amount in for street signs, road material and maintenance. This is just for, I would think, patchwork, Paul.
Yeah, so when we buy materials and buy concrete, buy item 4, buy blacktop, sand.
Mm. Great. And then repair and maintenance to equipment. The next department is 5142, which is snow removal, which thank goodness has been holding steadily low so far this year. Hopefully it will continue to be, but we have budgeted the same amount for 2021 as we did for 2020, just to make sure we are covered. A small amount in for equipment for 10,000. I'm sure you gearing up now for the season, Paul?
Yeah, we're doing the leaves now, and I think I say it every year that's one of the few lines on here that God makes that budget. Nobody on this conference call does. So we'll see what happens.
Hey,
Thanks for
Paul.
fixing it, Dale.
Hey, Paul, you put 160,000 for snow removal. That number is usually based on like a 5-year average, right?
You mean the overtime line?
That's the overtime.
I don't know. Oh, that's just the overtime one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that seem a little higher than what I imagine? I mean, I can only see 2 years back. So I don't know if it was like 300,000 the year before that, but
2017, it was 136,000. Yeah, 2018, it was 102. 2019, it was 137. But then, even if you have this year like you did in 2019, you got to bring it forward for contractual increases. So you probably would be around this arena.
With the 5-year average, we'd be around that? Okay.
With the contractual increases, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we could go back,
It just seemed high. It just seemed high because it's higher than anything else on the screen. So it seems higher than what the average could be since it's higher than everything else, even with the contractual increases. But that's why I asked. Like, you want to make it a 0? Seems like that could be 150. That's what I'm saying. But go ahead.
I'm taking notes.
Mayor, I appreciate that sentiment, but this is one of the few lines where we like to stay conservative. And if there's, ever a need for wiggle room at the end of the year, that's, these are the lines that we use. And we have no wiggle room now because we've been handling so many zeros. We've got the budget very tight. That's why I'm a little resistant to chopping back on lines that are deemed overfunded based on really just the 1 year of a mild winter.
Okay. I mean, I don't think it's just on 1 year, but it's your budget. If you feel strongly about it, that's fine. You'll shift it around as necessary.
So now is when you're getting your equipment ready for the season. We have an amount in for salt, so that is staying the same as for 2020 as well, at the 147.
Well, can I make a mention about salt?
Yeah.
Salt again is one of the blanket purchase orders that we create every year through the Office of General Services with the state, who gives us our salt vendor. So we have not spent 147,000 yet on salt, but that's a contractual thing that you have to enter into with OGS. So it's likely that we're going to have to pre-purchase and have stored salt for us with that vendor going into next year. So maybe next year, in 2022, we might realize some of that buffered savings, but it's something that we still have to budget for every year at the number that we anticipate spending. If that made any sense.
Right. Yes, because you have an encumbrance already out there with the vendor.
Yes.
Small amount in for equipment or truck rental and repair and maintenance to equipment.
That repair and maintenance line will fill up by the end of the year because that's where we buy and start, using the vehicles.
Right. Great. Okay, so the next department is 5182, which is our street lighting line.
I just jumped back to salt a second because I want to promote one of the things we've been doing the last few years.
Sure.
We fitted out 2 of the vehicles, and one of the vehicles in our capital druthers is proposed to be fitted out with pre-wetting operations. It basically creates a salt slurry. And we've been doing that when we anticipate and have the ability to pre-wet the roads with our salt slurry solution. and it's kind of an intrinsic thing, but I'd like to say that that helps us with some of our salt usage too, and cutting the salt usage back there too. That's really twofold. The less salt you use on the road is a good, we're being prudent with having to purchase less salt because of that, because it keeps the roads in a pre-wet condition and doesn't require the amount of salt you would if you just addressed it when the storm started. You can almost delay your regular straight rock salt casting. The other part is it keeps the salt, it keeps more salt out of the catch basins, which is really an environmental benefit, because all our catch basins are eventually tributary to the Hudson. Our really freshwater streams before the Hudson.
Right. Yeah. Great. Okay. So 5182 is street lighting. We have a piece of personnel charged here, along with relative associated costs. We have an electricity line. Vehicle operating expenses holding steady. Materials and supplies seems to be on target for this year. Repair and maintenance to equipment, there's only a small placeholder amount there, and that is it for that budget. Anything to add, Paul?
Yep. You see, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dale, but 5182, 403, electricity, is that your NIPA bills?
Yeah.
The NIPA bill, you'll see the how we're stepped down in the expenditures there from, well, you got to go back a little further, but if you went back to 2016 or 15, I think, you'll see that number was in excess of 200,000 annually. And that number this year absorbs the 17% increase that they were granted by the state legislature last year, I think. So that's all attributable to the LED installation.
Yes. Yep, you are correct. We did. We saved a lot. And they're actually proposing a 7.5 increase on production for 2021.
Yeah. The other thing we're doing, which is a little harder to pin down, but only because we passed building maintenance already, slowly but surely, the maintenance crews have been replacing a lot of the exterior building lighting with LED lighting. The majority of the lights at the operations center are LED now. It makes for a better view at night. It definitely lights up the place a lot for safety, because they do come here 24 hours a day, especially in emergency response. But I think you'll see it in the actual building. This is a metered building. It's not billed like the NIPA bills us for the street lights.
Right, right.
But I'm sure the electrical usage on this building has went down as well.
That's great. The next line is for off-street parking, 5650. Again, this is just a piece of a person charge there, just for correct function reporting. Next line, department is 7180, which is the community center maintenance. So a piece of John, and then another individual gets charged to this department to recognize and separate it from the actual recreations department. We made this change in 2020. And that's the same with the 7181 department. This is just for the pool maintenance. An individual is charged here along with appropriate personnel lines, and that is it for that department, to also keep it separate from the pool budget. $8140 is our storm sewers multiple lines. Everything is the same as last year, other than contractual increases for the personnel lines. And you have a small amount in there for equipment or truck rental there as well.
Yeah, that's that's really the line that you'll see the backhaul.
Right.
We bought it and started using it in 18. We didn't rent anything for 19, and this year the 11.6 is not a backhaul. I'm not sure what we charged rental to there, but you can see we used to spend in 17 and more in 16.
Yep.
25 to 30,000 for that rental.
Yep.
Yeah, Andy just whispered something in my ear here that we should point out. Some of the times you see like money's pinned to a line here on the actual. It could have been because we didn't rent anything and we knew we weren't going to rent anything through the end of the year, so we might have did a budget transfer out of that line, right, to pay for something else.
Right. Yep. Well, that'll show in the budget. On the top line is the appropriation, but if there was an adjustment, it would be recognized here. Your next department is 8160, which is refuse collection and disposal. We have a number of employees charged here, but I guess they can as well switch off and work on any other highway function.
Yeah, these folks are pretty fixed. It's more the other way around. When they're out, the highway will come into them. It's kind of rare because the crews are kind of fixed, and if you guys all live in the village, or most of you live in the village, you know your garbage crew. You'll know one of these guys. But they can work in other capacity, and they also have the 8-hour day. So in the latter part of the week, Thursdays and Fridays, when they may finish just a little before their time is over, they do go out and do things like TVs and metal and stuff like that. And can also get called in for overtime for non-sanitation type activities.
Right. Gotcha. So we did increase the overtime line a little bit to come up to what it actually has been. We have an amount for longevity, a small amount for out of title. There are 2 people that get a health stipend that work in that function. A small amount for in lieu of vacation, printing and postage. Is this for your sanitation schedule, Paul?
Yeah, that's the newsletter that goes out every year with that color calendar.
Yep. We did reduce the vehicle operating expense slightly. Increased your fuel slightly to match actuals. We kept 8160, 428. This is for your disposal fees. Is that correct?
That's tipping up at Charles Point. I could tell you that those bills lag, so that'll be met by the end of the year. We also charge the street sweeping to that, because street sweeping can no longer, that has to be disposed of at a receiving facility that's licensed to do it by the DEC. They can't just take you just can't mix your street sweepings with your leaves.
Right. Okay. The next department is 8161, which is refuse collection, but it's for our dumpsters. Do you want to speak on that, Paul?
Sure. So, and Dale, you can help me out again. Maybe 6 years ago, when we had things running pretty tight, we made the move to eliminate one of the sanitation routes, because after they switched to the 8-hour day, we made the calculation that their likely overtime, if we got rid of one of the routes and put the work from one route back onto the remaining 3 routes, there would be some overtime associated with that, but it is largely offset beneficially by the elimination of a total route. So we essentially took 3 employees out of the sanitation budget, and we dealt with that through attrition in the highway department. So It's still paying off to do it, although I will tell you, the overtime's starting to tick up, and I think that's a large part because of the, I don't know, there's a lot of waste out there. There really, really is. Recyclables and household waste. And again, you could see it when you drive around, but you can start to see the tonnage tickets tick up with the county too, because we track that too, and we see it starting to tick up. So we're gonna start having to have the discussion to maybe put that fourth route back into the Department of Public Works, which could have would have the benefit of probably eliminating the overtime component, but at the same time, new truck, new driver, 2 new laborers. So right now it's working well, but I digressed a little bit there. The reason that you have the refuse collection dumpster separate is because I don't know the section of the code, but in our village code, we are allowed to charge buildings that cannot meet the maximum waste disposal at the curb extra for a dumpster service, and ask them to get a dumpster that we will collect for an extra fee. So the way we derive that fee is by keeping this section separate from regular sanitation, and that's why we call it the refuse dumpster budget, because this budget is amortized over the folks that are on the dumpster program, and we charge them that fee, which we bill quarterly.
Yep.
Through the finance department.
With help from Dave.
Yes. Always help from Dave.
Help from Dave.
The dumpster program is his baby, yes.
Right, so the next the next section is 8170, which is our street cleaning section. We have an employee charged here, along with relevant personnel costs associated. There's an amount for diesel fuel, no unleaded for the street sweeper, Paul.
I'm sorry, which line were you on? That's a coding error.
Okay.
I'm sorry, no. No, it's not there, but I think the last one may have been, but either way, we could probably eliminate the line if we had to, but I think it's just really a template.
Gotcha. So brooms, fiber, and steel, we have an amount in there for those. Repair and maintenance. How old is the street sweeper now?
It's sneaking up there. It's probably, I'm going to say 10 years. Sound right?
No. We got a new one during my tenure, because remember it was out for repairs one spring. It was terrible. We had stuff blowing all over the place when it was out for repairs, and then we got a new one. It was like maybe 4 years ago.
3 or 4.
4 or 5 years. Yeah, it's not that old. It's probably like four years.
And it's cute. It's very compact. It looks shiny and new, Paul.
All right. Well, sorry. 5 years.
Paul.
It's not 5 years. It's not
Okay.
even that old.
4 years. I don't have that information in front of me, so I'm just going to stop guessing.
Well, I haven't been mayor for 10 years, and I remember it was during my tenure we had that. The other one was like falling apart. It was like out of commission. We'd sent it far away to get repaired, and
I know. I was actually just testing if everybody was listening because no one was saying anything. So 3.5 years old.
We're all on point. That's it. Let's see. So the next department is 8560, which is shade trees. Essentially, this is just contractual items, repair materials and supplies. And this is where we have our line for tree service. So do you want to speak on that, Paul, or you're good?
Yeah. If you've noticed, we have 3 separate annual bid. We have all 3 of our annual bid tree contractors out there because we really need to do a lot of catch up from the storm. And we're having a hard time doing it with just the one contractor with all the work that was out there. So you'll start to see a lot of that work happen in the last 2 weeks and for the next 2 weeks. just to point out some of the things that are a little more sort of more tangible, is the pruning of the trees on the Crescent and Main Street downtown. If you take a ride up Cedar Lane, we're not completely done, but we're about 3/4 done. On the Cedar Lane is a village road up to Stormytown. So instead of going back and forth with the building department trying to figure out whose responsibility it was for the trees and the overhang, we just took it upon ourselves to exercise our right to maintain the right of way and anything that overhangs into it. If you go up Cedar Lane, you'll see that canopy effect that was happening from the parcels to the right side of the road as you drive up the hill is no longer there. We pruned everything back, which I wanted to get done before the winter and the snow weight on those branches.
Good. I know there's been some questionable trees on the town side of the road for a couple of years, and one of them came down, I think, last winter. So
Yeah.
thanks for being so attentive to try and prevent that from happening.
We did in a lot of different places, like where we just have those overhangers. Like there was one on Camp Woods that just would make you nuts because you've got lower and bigger and lower and bigger, and those are just an accident waiting to happen. So we're trying to be a little more proactive there, and that's what the guys are doing out there now with the contractors. But I think this line is very likely to be exceeded this year.
Gotcha. Okay. But you think we're okay for 2021?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So we do have a few revenue items that are attached to DPW. This is Public Works Service Charge. I think, is that just for the refrigerator magnets and permits and bags? Is that correct, Paul?
Probably, yeah. The recycle bins, the biodegradable bags, the mattress plastic bags, and the Freon stickers and such. Yeah.
Yeah. You get a small amount in for charging station revenue. So that's budgeted here. We have green waste fees. This is the amount that we budget to be charged back to the town through the IMA. I know there is an invoice that I think we have to put through our system, which will uptick this current number. And as Paul was speaking about before, we have our dumpster revenues that come in. Then we have a couple more IMAs, the engineering, the street lighting IMA, snow removal, which I think the board just did a resolution for that one. Street opening permits, which is the majority, I believe, is Con Ed. And then minor sales and recycling, which is for items taken to Brookfield. The sale of surplus equipment line is tagged to DPW because it's usually DPW vehicles that end up being auctioned or sold. We didn't have 2 fire trucks that were sold as well this year, so that's included in this revenue number. We don't budget for that line because it is a one-time revenue source.
I know there was a request for the rolling stock and the vehicle inventory spreadsheet, which was sent around. I think what we did on there, we highlighted 4 vehicles, I think, which are going to be our next candidates for auction. But we were waiting for the bucket truck to come in and just take care of that at the same time. So I'll get with Stuart to get those VIN numbers on a resolution to get them declared surplus and do the auction sometime, probably early next year.
Okay, great. So that concludes our DPW section. Does anybody have any questions before we move on?
Are we going to talk about the capital projects on the DPW, if anything, or we're going to do all at once when Andy's done?
I'm open to whichever direction you would like to proceed.
It's up to you. It's up to you guys.
I think it might,
Go ahead.
it might be beneficial at the end, so we could stick to
Okay.
operating costs, because some of the things that we're going to discuss in sewer and water do kind of overlap into the general fund a little bit.
Okay.
Alrighty, so I'm going to stop sharing on this one. And I'm going to pull up water next. Okay. So Andy, are you ready?
I'm set.
The first line is, or department for water is 1440, which is engineering. We have a current budget for this year, which is 227,919, but this includes expenditures for your new filtration item. Is that correct, Andy?
Yes, yes. Part of their, part of those expenses do get charged to the capital project too. But a lot of that was charged out with the MIB issues and how we had to do the emergency engineering too.
Right. Mhm.
So yeah, it's different than the filtration plant. One thing I did want to say, there's four major, for the new board members, there's four major parts to this budget, to the water fund. There's the administration, there's the source supply, there's the filtration, and there's the distribution. So it's how we break it up, and it's how the different employees and materials and supplies are charged out too. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so the first function is administration. So we have our personal services line, associated overtime, longevity, sick pay incentive, and then we have our 109 line, which is basically for all the employees that cross functions from general to water to sewer. They are charged a proportional amount in relation to their job function to both water and sewer. This amount was revisited for the 2020 budget and was brought back into line to what we believe are actual time elements for all these people, people that are split across the funds, and we kept those allocations for this year. There's a small amount in for standby for personnel, which is a contractual item in lieu of vacation. Small amount in for computers. A small amount in for contractual items, telephone and internet charges, printing and postage for water. Office and supplies expense. These are all budgeted the same as they were for 2020. Professional dues and meetings. Have you been able to also do a lot of your meetings online, Andy?
I was able to do one meeting online, and actually I took a lab course in Poughkeepsie last week, and it was social distancing, and it's required to keep my license. So it's probably the last one to ever be taught, because now they're going to go virtual with that too. So hopefully everything goes back to normal the next year.
Absolutely. Bond and note expense, we will be going out to bond in 2021.
I think I
Rental,
did want to say real quick, the postage and printing, that's the annual water quality report, so that's why that number does cost quite a bit of money.
Mhm. Great, thanks for the clarification on that one.
And Andy, you're required to send that out, right?
Yes, and I'm working to really push the health department on if we can just go electronic. So we have a new regulator. Our regulator retired Friday, so I will ask that new regulator very shortly.
Good luck.
Yep, thanks. Oh, one thing before I forget, I wanted the board to realize that we did get approval for the water filtration plant other than the UV system 2 weeks ago. So we're ready to go for the filtration plant other than the UV system, and I'll talk about that later, but I don't want to forget about that.
Great.
Further down the page, rental of property, which gets increased by CPI, uniforms, consulting services, holding the same amount as last year.
I'm sorry, what is rental of property referencing?
That's where the water offices and department, the piece of building that they take up for in the armory, gets charged back to the general fund.
Oh.
Training, school, and education is the same as for last year, at 23,000, and that is it for administration. The next department is 8320, which is source of supply, power, and pumping. So we have some individuals charged here for payroll and associated costs for that. Small amount for equipment, contractual, holding the same as last year. Vehicle operating expenses, alarm monitoring, and this is what the chief was speaking about the other day during his budget meeting with the dispatchers and the police covering for the alarms. Repair and maintenance is up a little bit over last year. And then Havel Street pumping station. So these costs are all the costs associated with each individual pumping station. So it could be repair, maintenance, electricity, any of those items.
And also that's weather dependent. If we have a dry year like we did this year, we're going to pump more because people are going to use more water. But then we have higher sales too. So.
Mm-hmm. Right. And for Torbank tank this year, you cleaned the tank, Sandy.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's why.
That's why that's an anomaly.
Yep. Yep. We did increase our purchase of water up to $2 million for 2021, and increase SCADA. Do you want to speak about SCADA, Andy?
Yeah, we increased SCADA because we're disinfecting every day at the filtration plant, and we have some concerns with the servers and the equipment and the original salt solution that we sprayed compared to what we spray now. And we have had some situations where some equipment has kicked on and off, and anytime we change that equipment, it's going to be a software upgrade. So after speaking to the system integrator, it seemed like, as we need to, we will change it out, but the money needs to be there. And that's the main brain function of the filtration plant. Now, the filtration plant, even though it's 8340, it's also 8330, it's also 8320, because half of that treatment plant is pumping.
Right. And that leads us to the next department, which is 8330, which is purification. So this is where the water treatment operators are charged, along with overtime, longevity, out of title, sick pay, health stipend, an amount for part-time employees is in there for 2021, same as 2020, although I don't think we were able to take advantage of it, it looks like. Equipment is in at 45,000. We do have a computer budgeted for 2021. Materials and supplies, a slight increase, but a larger increase, as you can see here, is to abrasives and chemicals.
I'll speak to that. So we've had to increase our dosage of what we feed for the polyaluminum chloride. That's the main coagulant of the plant because of the MIB. We've had to put the powder activated carbon into the raw water, which everybody knows about, to remove the MIB. So because there's more demand with the powder activated carbon, it causes more alum to be used. But not only does that go up, but also the alum waste goes up because because we're using more alum, there's more alum that's being pumped, that's being hauled away. I had mentioned that we're waiting for results, and we still are waiting for the second. We did 4 rounds of results for the PFOAs, and that's like Teflon and byproducts of Teflon and fire retardants that can get into your water stream. The Indian Brook water is very low, but we did have some higher readings from the Croton system. So we took a bunch of tests, and we should get some results back shortly, and then we have to let the health department know right away. But that can drastically change the design of the plant because if we do have higher PFOAs, we're not going to use the powder activated carbon at the beginning of the plant. We would use granular activated carbon in the filters. So if we would use the granular activated carbon in the filters, we wouldn't have to use so much alum that I talked about now in the new water filtration plant, and less alum trucking. So this is all being looked at. It's based on these results. Again, I always say the silver lining of the MIB, well, this is the silver lining of the PFOA, where this is happening now before the plant goes out to bid, if that makes sense to everybody. So we need more money for the chemicals and the abrasives, which is the aluminum in that line, the 415 line, and then the removal on the 8330-519 line. And then we had mentioned the SCADA. The SCADA number went up from 50,000 to 75,000, and that's there in case we need it this year. Everything else in this budget has been a 0 increase, to make it simple, but if you need to, we can go through it. We're almost through it anyways, but go ahead, Dale.
So the next department is 8340, which is transmission and distribution. So again, we have a set sort of individuals that are getting charged here to the 8340 and their associated personnel costs. You have a small amount in for equipment in the 8340-201 line. Vehicle operating expenses is holding steady. Slight adjustment to the unleaded and the diesel fuel, along with materials and supplies. Then you have rental of property again. So this is the function for the water department itself. Repair and maintenance, slight increase to that line. And then your standard dollar amount for meters.
Yeah, I want to talk about repair and maintenance, okay? So if you look back a year ago, we spent $247,000 in that line. That was, we changed out about 75 lead service lines throughout the distribution system. A lot of this is going to be based on the EPA guidelines from the regulators. We did a materials audit of our whole entire, every service line out of 6,500, the whole town and village. And there was about 200 service lines out there that had lead in them. And the regulations have changed, and they're going to change this next year. And it's based on how many out of samples go above the maximum contaminant level. And it could be to a point where if you do go above that level, the EPA says, okay, Austin, you have 100 service lines. We want you to change 3% of that a year until it's completed. Well, 3% is 30 service lines. That could be 150,000 a year. So, you know, we'll get there when we get there. We've been very proactive with it, but I just kind of wanted to let the board know that that is a possibility. We do have money in here throughout the budget that you could make a modification, but as we find them and we fix service lines, we always replace what is lead on our side. We do not control from the valve into the homeowner's property. That's owned by the homeowner. But we do let them know when we find lead and we make a recommendation that they should change it out. I think that's it for water.
That is it for water. Any questions before we start sewer?
No, go for it. We're going to talk about water, I imagine, when we talk about capital projects. So.
Yes.
Sewer, again, is a 0 across the board. Paul could talk about the collection system. The only thing, Paul pretty much takes care of the collection system, and then I manage the sewer lift station. So, and that's a separate line. There's 2 lines in sewer.
So just to append that, I'm going to say unlike the town, because the town has a lot of changing topography and they're kind of inland compared to the village. They have, I think, 10 pump stations, 12 pump stations, sanitary sewer pump stations in the town. The village has 1. All of our sewage that is collected and conveyed to the county's wastewater treatment plant just past Engle Park flows there via gravity, with the exception of some of the sewage on North Water Street through the pump station down there. So again, we have the staff that's billed to here and have kept the 0% request here. I don't think there's really any outliers to discuss here at all.
Yep. No, I agree. Yep. So basically, there's very little change, except for contractual increases. Your repair maintenance, we're keeping at 45,000 for 8120, which is your sanitary sewer department. Sewage pumping is relatively flat as well. At 849, 881 for requested.
Dale, could you pump that up to 150%?
Yeah, sorry.
You know what would be
Sorry.
helpful, since we're, this is the first time that we're talking about the 3 different budgets. Most things obviously are part of the general fund. Could you give us just a little bit of context and help us understand the difference in the size of the different operating budgets and the fund balance associated with them? So, for example, our general fund operating budget for the year is, I don't know what it is this year, 138 million comes to mind. Or 1 point, what is it?
It's about 38.
38. Okay, I made it really, really, really big. Okay. So 38 million for the general fund. Thank you. Then the water operating is more like 11 a year. What is it?
Hang on 1 second, and I'll bring up. Hang on. I'll make this easy.
The summary slide?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You're gonna answer all my questions with one little slide. It's probably in this book here too.
Well, we went,
Yeah.
there is a summary slide that does answer those questions.
Oh, hang on. Oh,
Do you want me to pull the PowerPoint up?
yeah, can you plug that one in? Because I don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Sorry, didn't mean to let you squirm there.
No, it's all right. I have so much stuff in that folder now.
Right, hang on one second. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
basically,
Mhm.
Yep.
No, go ahead.
here's your appropriations, your estimated revenues. If we appropriated fund balance, it's over here, and then I don't know if you'll be able to see it. But general fund is the only one that has amount to be raised by real property taxes. So when you're speaking of percentage of fund balance, you're essentially taking what we call unassigned, or I'll just say unassigned. It's easier when you get to the water fund, because in terms of the state controller, they make the assumption that everything is assigned when you get to a water fund or a sewer fund. But for us, we still recognize that there are amounts that have not been assigned at all. They're just there as a fund balance item. So at the end of 2019 for the general fund, we had $14,214,225 in unassigned fund balance. So that's free and clear of any restrictions. We've already accounted for what we appropriated in the 2020 budget with that number. So that was around 650 plus an additional, I believe it was 367,000. So that was already taken out of that number.
I'm sorry, Dale. You just I missed a couple of things that you just said. So, is there something on the screen that I'm not understanding that is the fund balance for each of these, or did you just say it and I didn't?
I had just quoted it from the audit report itself. It's not on this screen.
Okay.
But the unassigned fund balance for general fund is 14,214,225.
Okay.
And that is net of what we had already budgeted in 2020 to be used towards the 2020 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then what is it for water and sewer? Do you know the fund balance?
Yep. So for water, we have, and I'm just going to call it unassigned, even though they label it assigned in the audit report. It's $5,195,871.
Okay. And the sewer is
Uh,
obviously much less than that.
yeah. Sewer, I'd actually have to go look up online, because it's it should be this 1,517,789, but I can double check on that number.
So then our fund balance for sewer is almost the same as our whole year of operating.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do we have a big sewer project coming up? Oh, that just happens because we've been banking money in the water fund because we know we have a big water project coming up, and sewer is just a percentage of the water fees.
Right.
Okay. Do we have a lot of debt service for sewer? The
Uh,
last big project I can think of was the Greenway, but
If you hang on, I'll let you know in 2 seconds. So final bonds with refunding. The total amount of debt for the sewer fund is $3,615,320.64. So a little over 3.5 million. The total.
go ahead, Paul.
Dale, I think just to clarify it and for everybody's benefits, it's not all projects either. Some of it is some of the larger rolling stock that we will distribute the bond to the water, sewer, and general fund as well, correct? Like the backhaul, like the large six-wheeler, and all the other vehicles that we use that are not really assigned to a specific department, that really are cross-used,
Right.
are assigned as debt service as well, Mayor, not just a particular project that is like a bricks and mortar project.
Okay, okay. And it'll be done proportionately the way that so many other things are.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering because, you know, we talk about how we have this really healthy fund balance for our general fund because it represents, you know, almost 40% of our annual operating. And I know we've been building up our fund balance in water because we obviously are going to be doing this major project and want to be able to keep the, you know, minimize the amount that we raise the water fees associated with it to deal with the fund balance. And so it's great to see that our water fund balance is, you know, over 40% of our annual operating for water. Obviously, the annual expenses for water is going to increase when we take on additional debt. But, you know, the sewer, we didn't really try and build up, unless somebody can, you know, tell me differently. I don't think we really tried to build up the sewer fund. It's just what happens because the sewer rates are tied to the water rates. So I know we don't want to take on more debt than that is necessary. And we talked last week about, is there any debt that we have that is coming to a point where we can pay it off? Obviously, sewer funds have to be used toward sewer fund expenses. We can't take the sewer fund balance and pay off debt for a general fund expense. But if there were, you know, I think you know where I'm going with this, Dale.
Right, right. If there was a portion that we could use to pay off a portion of debt, we could absolutely look into that.
Yeah, I mean, and also I guess that I don't know is just in general, when we're looking at the health of the fiscal health of the village, any debt that we take on, whether it's for, you know, any one of these three funds, any debt that we take on, I assume is part of the calculation for our fiscal health overall, right? Because it all contributes to our ability to manage our debt. But I don't know how differently that that plays out when you're talking about you know, there's just sewer is so minimal and compared to water and certainly to general fund. But okay,
Right. Right. And
thanks. I also just wanted newer folks to understand the significance, the magnitude of the different financial you know, liabilities that we have or benefits that we have for each of these funds. And also the big difference between general fund and then the water and sewer are fee-based, whereas the general fund is obviously mostly property tax revenue.
Right. And then for water and sewer fund, there's also a lag in revenues. So we use that fund balance is basically a part of it is for cash flow. So that's part of it, you know, for those two funds as well.
Well, we should be in good shape for that.
Yes. we are doing okay. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Sure. Okay.
So are we on to capital projects for water and DPW?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So let me just pull up my screen. All right. How's that? Is that okay?
Looks good. Thanks, Dale.
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I'll leave it to Paul and Andy. Just tell me when to turn the page.
Okay. Is everybody on the appropriate page, highway and sidewalk improvement, number 1?
Mhm.
Yes?
Well, Dale's got it
Yep.
up on the screen for us, so that's what a lot of us
Yeah.
are looking at.
It's on the
Yes,
screen.
I have to work off this, Dale, because I can't read that. Okay, so that is the anticipated CHIPS money, which we still think is going to come in this year, and we put last year's number in there, hoping that we get that 25% back, or 20% added back next year. But that's the rough estimate for the CHIPS, and we usually exceed that a little bit, so we weren't that overly concerned with the reduction for COVID this year, because we also typically get a extreme weather boost to that number every year that the state kicks in, and then a little extra money sometimes for the Pave New York program, which I think was funded again in the 2021 state budget. That accompanied with the carryover and the village's commitment, if they wanted to add to that line, would give us the 590 number for next year.
Okay, so the next one is CDBG ADA sidewalk improvements.
Yeah, that's the money that we received through it's a $400,000 project that we made application through Westchester County's Department of Planning. They resurrected the CDBG program, as I think you all know, and that's federal money coming in and administered through the county to the munis. And we made application for that during the last 3-year cycle. So we made application for that like 2 years ago. And this is the second year of the program. 2021 will be. And that is for sidewalk improvements. We're still refining the actual scope that we have to coordinate with the county, but it's basically going to be ADA and sidewalk improvements, similar to what you saw we did on Broad, where we redid the intersections there with ADA compatible streetscape. We're looking to do that. I'm trying to do it village-wide, since the CDBG map has now expanded to include more or less the entire village. But the county is back and forth. They think they might want to have a more defined area. So that's to be determined, but I'll let you know when we finally iron that out. But we do have that, and there's nothing has been said to me yet that says that those funds are in jeopardy, and it's a 50-50 match, so hence the $200,000 request from the village. Going into vehicles and large and heavy equipment that are from Public Works. In the 2020 year, we purchased the items that are on here, with the exception of this. We took out the 2 largest items to defer them to next year because of the uncertainty with the COVID situation. That would be the 6-wheel dump truck, fitted out with a plow and a spreader, and a smaller dump truck fitted out with the same appurtenances. And those are the numbers associated with that. They are actually purchased off of, actually, Andy just corrected me, it's actually 3 vehicles. The second one, the Mason dumps, is 180 total, approximately 90 each. Those are really the heavy use fleet vehicles, and the ones that we want to get rid of them and put them into surplus, that I referenced earlier. The trucks, as they are here, are either purchased off of the consortium, one of the 2 consortiums that we're a member of, except the 6-wheel, I think, which and you got to refresh my memory, Dale, because we did the purchase order, but that came off the National Joint Purchasing Agreement, that new consortium that was created a couple years ago, right?
Yep.
So the POs were actually, I'm not sure about the Mason dumps, but for the 6-wheel dump truck, we actually wrote the PO. It was sent down, it was approved, but then we stopped it. So that vendor still has that vehicle, and if it gets approved, we're going to look to execute that early in the year. you go into refuse and sanitation, we did not buy a garbage truck in, we're not proposing to buy a garbage truck in 2021, but we are looking to do one in 22 and 23 for that aforementioned conversation we had, or reason I gave you earlier, rather. So we'll revisit that at the end of this year. It's very likely that in 2022, it's going to be prudent to buy a new garbage truck. We maintain the police vehicles, but I won't speak to the purchase. Same with the fire department. Same with Parks and Rec. Okay. Fire department expansion. I'm sure I could help with that if and when in the office here. The municipal building improvements, I'm going to turn over to Andy to talk about, including the elevator. You can talk about the elevator.
Yeah, so we're trying to get that water distribution truck, which you see the 50,000. We have the money put aside, but we didn't do it yet. This is on page 3. This is under water department.
Yeah, water department there. Building maintenance. It's on building maintenance.
Oh, okay.
That's what
I'm looking at 2 different things.
But this isn't the order. That's the one that she had.
Okay.
Are we over on buildings, or did he want to talk about the vehicle?
Let me just finish the vehicle. All right, so we're not going ahead with the electric hybrid right now. I'm going to see if I can get another year out of the vehicle that I'm driving. It's got 97,000 miles, so we did not propose that for this year. We proposed it for 2020 because of COVID. We didn't do it, and I didn't put in for 2021. It's holding up, so I'm going to keep using it. We still need to purchase a 4x4 utility truck for 50,000 that is in there for 2020. It's just things got really screwed up with purchasing, so we're just trying to make that happen before the end of the year. So that's that. The fire department, Paul started to speak about it. The firehouse generator, we pushed out to 2022. That was designed. Oh no, that's cataract, so I'm kind of out of that. A hollow hose generator I was involved with. We designed it, but the project was put on hold. Municipal building improvements. So I think the 2020, everything there was put on hold. Let's talk about what's next year. So next year for 2021, we put 60,000 aside for the file room, the map room upstairs. That could be used, and we met with an architect that is providing a proposal to village manager, and we want to make sure that there's funding there. If we make more offices, we divide the file room, but there needs to be HVAC, there needs to be electrical work, there needs to be just materials and labor, obviously. The generator at the municipal building, we've talked about this for the last 20 years. We don't know how we're going to do it, but I mean, it's easy to install a generator, and we put a number in there of 200,000 for a generator that would be either a gas or a diesel generator. Depends on the opacity and what the EPA allows. I think with the moratorium, they're not going to allow the gas, so we have to go diesel. It's a little cheaper for the diesel anyways. It's just not as good for the environment. It's the placement. Some thoughts were, do we take the building that's next to the outside building there that we use for Section 8 files and parking meters? Do we take that down, make a few more parking spots, and put a generator there? That's a bigger discussion. But
Okay, so I think Karen, you already introduced that in an earlier meeting with the board. So we're looking to incorporate the generator facet into the bigger discussion, because that might free up the space to use for the generator cited for the 16 Croton Avenue project?
So the 16 Croton Avenue project, we put 150,000 in there for as a placeholder, and that's for the second and third floor offices, depending on this plan that we're looking at, that the architect is getting proposal together, to move as much of the services to the first floor. And possibly some of those services could go to the community center. Some of those services could come over here to that planning office, or not the planning office, but the file office upstairs. We don't know how it's going to go, but we do know it's going to cost money. The elevator rehab, it's been breaking down like crazy in the last year and a half, not to a point where it's a safety issue, because we constantly check the elevator safety as far as you know, the cables, the motors, the weight capacity. It's that the elevator controls and the mechanisms are not allowing the elevator to open up on the first floor. The last upgrade was 1963, I believe. So what our suggestion is, after talking to this consultant and talking to elevator companies, would be to use the existing shaft and to rebuild the car, rebuild all the controls, the motors, everything. And we put a number of 350,000. Carpeting in the municipal building, certain offices need carpeting, and that is a placeholder. And then that last line is to take that storage building that I mentioned in the beginning of this talk down. And we don't know until we test everything. Is there asbestos roof tiles? Is there asbestos in the walls? Is there, you know, the floor tiles, whatever. We just, if there was nothing hazardous, it could probably be done with 30,000, but we just want to be conservative with that. And then carpeting for the courtroom in the police station. That's it as far as.
So if we're going to talk about building improvements, I have a few comments. We're not looking at doing anything at the ops center this year. I guess that's being put off, but I just will say you got natural gas listed there. I would prefer if you could look at alternatives like heat pumps and other things that Con Ed and NYSERDA have a lot of incentives for right now because of the natural gas moratorium. So I hate the idea of installing natural gas. There's better options, and there's other things that are being incentivized right now.
Mayor, we are doing some at the op center, though, not the major things that we had planned in the past, though.
Okay.
Okay, so just
the file room renovations is the only thing I'm seeing.
Yeah, basically, and so, maybe some reconfiguration if we need to on the ground floor with some of the meeting rooms, but relatively minor stuff.
Okay, but not the elevator, not the
No.
the HVAC system or anything. So then at 16 Croton Avenue, I guess, we did I'm not really excited about the idea, not just the $200,000, but I don't really see the rationale for a generator at 16 Croton Avenue. When we got the generator for the, I remember with Superstorm Sandy, we had, I think that was it, when we lost power at Indian Brook, and that was a real concern. And we've done a lot of upgrades to our generators. But one of the things we learned when we did a study with, please hold it there. Where are you going? We were talking about microgrids and everything else, but we were not a good candidate for opportunities for microgrids because we were so prepared for major outages because we've done such a good job at having this backup generator power in key locations. And I feel like if we've learned anything this year where we were required to shut down so much of village government, it's that a lot of our services, at least to get through the length of a storm, administrative services don't need to happen at 16 Croton Avenue. So somebody's gonna have to explain to me why we would go through the effort to have a generator at 16 Croton Avenue rather than, when we already have it at so many of the other locations where we have emergency services, like plowing and police and stuff like that. I guess those are the big things for me as far as building improvements.
You guys hear me? All right. The generator, I'm just going to speak on that. Andy, is that a full building generator, or is that just something designed for life safety? There you go.
Now you can hear me. That's full. That's a full building.
All right. And
But
then,
it could be designed to handle just the elevator and maybe Craig's servers
yeah, the IT stuff and,
and possibly a circuit for heat.
That was a
and not-
concern that
not
16
AC.
Bowden was a server, by the way. So if.
It doesn't need a full building generator, though.
no,
It is
that's,
true, But that is
Building a rocket
probably the
ship.
primary
can
Can
a person talk here?
Sorry, Bob.
No, not you, Rika. I have serious questions about this. And, I mean, I'm all for a generator, all because of life safety and the IT department, because that is your heartbeat of your village. And in times of need or during a bad storm, you're going to need that. The elevator's got to run. Your fire alarm, your alarm system got to run. Lighting to get out of the building if something happens. To run the building on a daily basis is, a full generator. I don't know if that's necessary, because in reality, most people are probably going to leave the building, but we need to be able to give them the capability of getting out of the building. Now, speaking about whether it's diesel, when you say gas, are you talking about natural gas?
What was the last thing you said? Sorry. You broke up.
The fuel system, the diesel or is that natural gas you were talking about?
Yeah, I try and put gas wherever we can in our pump stations, but the moratorium, we're not going to be able to get gas for years.
Right.
So
So this would be a small, whatever size generator is with a belly tank, I assume, for the diesel, correct?
Yeah, it would be a belly tank that would be for 5 days. And, if it was natural gas, it would be at least 25% more on the cost. We could also
Absolutely. It's hands down, and for the amount of times that hopefully it doesn't have to run, I know environmentally it's not the best, but I'm going to say that diesel is going to be a more reliable generator than any of them.
The thing about it is, where the EPA gets involved is that you have to stay under a certain amount of hours in a month. And
Right.
if it starts up, automatically once a week for an hour, it's
Right.
way below that. And if you get 3 events in a year, you're way below that. So they look
Right.
at, like I mentioned, the opacity. As it's not just the cost of the generator, the amount of infrastructure that you're putting in.
Oh, no, I know.
The wire size that's not the big deal. It's once you go that way, if you're just going to go break it down to just the elevator and the servers, it's a lot less. But once we start pulling the heat, lighting, and forget about AC, it's gonna be some money.
Don't we have to use a portable generator now for instances like this?
I do not know what Craig uses, to be honest with you. For the rest of the building, we use nothing. And, my only concern is I don't know what the code, and Bob, you probably understand better. I don't know what the code requires for an elevator. I don't. It's just that we've never lost power with someone in the elevator. But it could happen. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely. As far as a code on, I think it just has to recall in case somebody's in it. It goes into a fault and recalls down to the ground floor, and then it's not used. So you can't call it. In other words, if you go into a generator mode, I'm pretty sure that you'll not be able to use it because you don't want to depend on that generator and put that strain on it for the elevator. So I believe it would just like fire alarm. They pull a station and it recalls down to the first floor or the second floor, wherever primary or secondary recall is.
That's great. So, if we're looking at just providing for for the IT section and maybe a circuit for the boiler, then, you know, you're talking that number could be 60 or 70,000 versus 200,000.
Right. And then your location becomes a little more, you have a little more choices with location because of size.
Exactly. So it's, you know, that's a decision you guys can make.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against a generator going in there at all because, you know, again, that's the heartbeat of the village. And I think we need to at least maintain, God forbid something happens, you know, the life safety aspect and the IT department and heat.
I agree. Heat and the IT.
So we have servers in multiple locations. Do we have to have one in every building where people use computers, or just they are there at this time?
I don't want to speak for Craig, but I think he has redundancy up in the operations center, and I know he has UPS systems.
Yeah, I was going to say he must have UPS systems built into that. He'd be crazy if he didn't.
Yeah, he does, and another comment I want to make about the fuel. I think it's, you know, I think we could petition the moratorium, even if this, and write it up as an emergency installation, an emergency need, possibly a life safety need, and we could always convert it at the right time also to natural gas, which would burn cleaner. And with regard to how much of the building you're going to do, keep in mind we have a tenant there, which I think that probably is the best location to operate out of an emergency, because I don't know if they have the access to the multiple buildings. So that's something to consider too. But again, that's all really in conjunction. This whole generator is really in conjunction with the earlier discussion you all had on, you know, the multiple building improvements that we're looking to accommodate certain of the department functions.
And the other thing is, you know, there's another way to skin the cat here. We can put an outside receptacle, as you know, Bob.
Right.
We can have a trailer mounted generator that it won't guarantee to work in every single building because voltages do vary and phases vary, as you know. But why not have something that you can pull up and we can cone off an area, and it could be a trailer mounted generator that we keep here in the garage, and it could, if everything lines up, that provides backup redundancy for a pump station here and there that we can use in the future. So we need to look at this. I think we should, you know, pull in a Lindstar company and look at this, do a small proposal on what their recommendation is. But that number can drastically come down if we do it that way.
Yeah, if we look at it the right way. But, you know, I'd like to be, you know, a part of that if I could be, you know, just to have my professional knowledge, you know, as far as what goes on and what's needed, what's not needed. And I can get that code as far as what the elevator is required, but I'm pretty sure it just recalls.
Yeah. So what happens right now if the power goes out and somebody's in the elevator? It just stops where it is and the fire department comes and opens the door? But if it happened, what would happen? Like it would just get stuck and the fire department would come and open the door, right?
Exactly.
You might not like the way the door gets opened, but it'll get opened because it's
right.
old.
We're about to spend $350,000 to fix it and replace it anyway.
Right. Well, then you'll be up to speed. You know, we'll all have keys and we can get in there.
So I don't know if you guys are in agreement. Do you want to drop that number to 75,000 and we'll do it?
I'm sorry. I don't want to drop the number to anything. I feel like we're having a conversation on how to build a castle, and no one on this call has actually figured out why we're building a castle. It's a 3-floor building. There is nothing of emergency that happens in that building. During a pandemic, the building was shut down. A couple of people went to work because they chose to. They didn't actually have to be in that building. We could have done 99% of what we had to without anything happening in that building. The only thing that needs to be solved for is an IT solution. Like, we're having a discussion about nuts and bolts about building things, and I actually don't know. And we don't need to bring a consultant to do design work because I'm not sure what it is you were all trying to build in this building. I haven't seen or done a walkthrough myself to even understand what is being done with this building, so I have no clue what's happening. And what are we doing? It doesn't matter to me if you spend $50,500 because frankly, except for the elevator, which is like really a beautiful antique. It's really a shame that we have to get rid of it, but of course we have to get through it because it's outlived its time and it's not working correctly and all of that stuff, and it could be dangerous. But aside from that, we're talking about a 3-story building that has frankly no emergency service that I'm aware of, and we need to figure out how to deal with IT. And nobody on this call knows what Craig has done yet or hasn't done that we may or may not have to do. I just feel like homework needs to be done without consultants, but you all need to sort of come to the board and say, this is the future of the building. These are the people that will use it. In the case of an emergency, we know that we use a community center for things. We know there's a pool in there that needs to be heated. I understand all that. I haven't heard one person say yet why we need any of this stuff, except for an elevator. So can we sort of get a proposal for the use of the building, the effect it has on human beings, what needs to be done for a 3-story building, which means unless you're handicapped, everybody can walk downstairs that I'm aware of, and you're redesigning it to make the main floor for the consumers. The main floor is flat to the land, so nobody's getting stuck or having anything done. So let's not get into the nuts and bolts and budgets. How about, like, what are we doing?
So let's disaggregate these things because it's a little bit, there's really 3 separate issues. The issue of a generator and what we need is mostly specific to IT issues. So that's something we can resolve, and we don't necessarily have to have the largest generator possible, because you're right, from emergency services is really IT, and the server's working more so than anybody has to be here. The other changes that we're talking to in the building, which probably are not the most, I would think the $150,000 in addition to the elevators is probably not far off the mark, but we really have an issue that predates COVID, which is security issues in the building. We have a problem partly because of the elevator and partly because of logistics and facilitating things for residents, is that for security reasons, and now definitely because of the pandemic, the value of having everything that's resident facing on the first floor creates, is just a way better system across the board. So it also is helping departments that typically had a lot of walk-in traffic operate more effectively, like the finance department, because they no longer have that. So that was something we had talked about, because it's also a security issue. It's really not safe in the building to have people walking through the building with pretty limited supervision. So for a variety of reasons, that's one thing we've been talking about for a while. If we do that, that will probably require the reconfiguration of some of the space downstairs, as well as some of the spaces on the 2nd and 3rd floors to make that effective. The issue from the elevator is really a separate issue specific to the elevator. So right. There's 3 separate things that we're looking at. The operations part, the putting the resident services on the 1st floor, then speaks to changes that we're looking at in other buildings, which really talk about efficiency, better use of space, better ways that we can plan for programming at the rec center, the youth bureau, things like that. Those can be probably, we can value engineer those recommendations over time, because none of them are critical, but they are important. Again, I think the issue of the generator is something that we should relook at and figure out just the most cost-effective way to make sure that we have a server running in the event of a power outage.
Great. Thanks.
Is there currently emergency lighting or battery backup lighting in that building?
I do not believe so.
No, but just the exit lights.
Right, but as far as egress lighting, 5 o'clock it gets dark. Right, we lose power. You want to walk downstairs. I get what you're saying, but emergency lighting's key. Okay.
That's probably a good thought. It seems like you mentioned that could be batteries, because it's just to get people out of the building. That's something that maybe, I think the 150 for the building renovations and improvements is probably a little conservative. And I think the generator for 200,000, I mean, Rika and I at least are certainly not supportive of that. And so if we're going to make any changes, I would I would think that the 150 seems a little low. But maybe you guys base that on more information than I have. But if it was just a ballpark, it seems low because it's a lot of offices. They're going to be shifting both up and down. We have reached the 9 o'clock mark, which was our anticipated end time. And I'm not sure what else there is for us to explore tonight. So I just wanted to be mindful of that.
Just some more capital items we'd like to discuss with you.
Okay, great.
I think, right? Yeah, we got all the other capital covered.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to talk about one of them, and then Andy will talk about the bulk of the rest. As you know, we have Andy talks about it often in his operating budget because he does a lot of the meter upgrade and replacement with his staff in-house. But one of the things that we wanted to explore this year was for the board to consider, and the proposals are forthcoming, so it still has to be defined. The board to consider, instead of replacing meters through the operating budget. Let me take a step back. The reason you want to replace a water meter in these residences and commercial uses is because a newer meter is a more accurate meter and tends to lead to a higher revenue per meter because they're more accurate. Sometimes the meters slow down over time and they don't read the full use of the property. So the other benefit that we want to realize with the meters when we put them in is give them the ability to be radio read. But replacing them at the rate we're doing it is not going to have our system upgraded for years. So we're working on a proposal from our annual bid meter contractor, which has their particular meter in all our installations, so we have redundancy throughout the system, and everything is easier to maintain that way, is to put radio read meters in every installation that does not have a radio read ability now, and to create a fixed network throughout the entire system. There's a lot of benefits that are above and beyond just a more accurate meter for the user. It gives the ability with that fixed network to have instant notification per property, to have instant notification of a youth variance, for example. We have a lot of issues with finance where people will either be away from home or not realize that they have a leaky toilet because they don't hear it, or have something else on their property that's causing extraordinary use that leads to thousands of dollars in water bills that they're not expecting. And since they're only billed quarterly and we really can't detect it outside of that curb stop box, we can only see what happens on our main through the SCADA systems that Andy discussed earlier, but we really can't see what goes on within a house. And that type of use really won't be caught by the system, if you will, as a water main leak. And we would be able to know with a fixed network instantly if something like that was happening, because we could put that into the software that goes along with these systems. So we're getting some rough numbers in. So the numbers that we're going to come to you with for a proposal in 2020 is to do a water meter replacement program for all of the existing ones that are not radio read able. And even though the formal proposal is not in, that's estimated to be between $650,000 and $750,000. And then the year after those are all put in, so in 2022, we're looking to have that fixed network system installed, which is basically you go throughout your entire system, which is the village and the town, and you create a digital network that we can read with software anywhere with handhelds, laptops, desktops, to see what exactly is going on every single meter in every user in the entire system, which has the advantage of, again, not just the more accurate and more revenue on the water usage side, but to control per user. And Dale will tell you more often, that it's not an isolated incident. there's people with water meter questions 5-10 times a year, but they're extraordinary amounts, and this would rid that. And if it did happen, it would make the village impenetrable in defense that it's not our issue. The issue was within the house itself. So that's one of the things we're looking to define and do. But in the 2020 cycle, I think only because I'm looking at my draft, Dale, and I don't know what you put in the final copy. I think we asked for 650.
Yeah.
Water meter. Yeah, 650 was a guess at the time. I'd really be more comfortable putting 750 in there now because I've talked back and forth with the vendor a few times after we submitted this number to Dale.
Okay, great. Makes a lot of sense. Thanks for explaining that.
When was the last time we did this with the meters?
We don't have a fixed network system now, and we've never done a capital meter program. We've always done it in-house with our annual bid meter vendor.
Got it.
This is really a lot of munis are going this way. Fixed networks is definitely the way of the future, and it really would allow us to offer a service to residents that we can't offer now. I mean, to the point where I experienced where I live myself, where I had to use up a lot of water for something I was doing at my house. They actually called my house and asked if we were doing anything specific that would cause such a great water usage. That was I thought that was pretty neat, and also a nice service to offer someone if they're away. You know, some people go away for the winter, and they come back and didn't realize that they had a running toilet or a broken line because their heat went down in the house, and things like that can be detected like that.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, I'm going to speak for, so the THM removal system, that project's still moving forward. The rough and electrical is done. We're waiting for the panels to come in, so that's that $1.3 million, and that job will go over the winter into the spring. Shaft 4 generator, we were going to bid beginning of this year, but we were able to rebuild the front end, so the generator is about 50 years old. I'm pushing it out to 2022. I think I can get another 2 to 3 years out of it. Painting the exterior tank, Lakeville, we did every 5 years, we're required to go through all the distribution tanks, and that is a $2 million upgrade. The Lakeville tank, the bottom seam needs to be re-welded, and the whole tank needs to be painted, but that's for 2023. The small outlay capital projects, I'm not going to talk about. The big ones for this year, well, also the Stormytown Road that got resubmitted to the health department for their final approval, and I'm expecting that the $1.3 million job to go out in the spring. McCarthy Road replacement, that's for 2021. That'll be bid over the winter. Snowden Westerly Bridge water main replacement. We've had issues with the existing water main that goes across the Snowden Avenue Bridge. I'm going to be working on it next week with a county contractor. That was last put in 1986, and that main is somewhat compromised. My biggest concern is if there's a blowout, and that could do major damage, crosses the tracks. So the ultimate plan is to bore a 12 or 16-inch water main underneath the tracks and then tie the distribution systems on the east and west side of the tracks. That's we're looking to start the design in the spring. Paul talked about the water meter replacement program. And that's it. I guess just the filtration plant we're moving forward with. We need the final proposal from Hazen and Sawyer to incorporate the redesign of the UV system, and then whatever those results for the MIB removal, and whatever the results turn out for the PFOAs, that's going to determine what's going to happen with the filtration plant. But the filtration plant, in 99% of its designed, it's approved by the health department, which took 4 years. It was a big deal. And we still think that we can start, bid it over the winter and have a spring start date. So that's kind of where we're at. Paul and I are finishing up the RFQ for the construction management, which we're doing an RFQ for that. And just all the technical stuff, we'll get that to Stuart to finalize and get it to you guys, and then go out for that for the construction management. So obviously before we bid the plant. Any questions?
Good luck.
Sorry, I don't have for the big stuff. I just the carpeting requests. I don't know enough about it, but where I work, and the building's like, I don't know, 77,000 square feet. We also use that kind of carpeting. We're not using it anymore, using laminated wood where we do replacement, because what we learned during the pandemic is actually for dirt and a whole bunch of reasons. Carpeting is sort of in the past. Laminated wood that doesn't allow for mold and all that, and you put it right on top of whatever floor you're using. Better for handicapped people, for the elderly, better for kids. I don't think it's as soundproof is the issue, but I would look into it, because I would just hate to replace things rather than look into the next generation product.
Okay.
And I don't know, I mean, this is what we have to do with some of the floors based on pandemic and requirements. We can't have children in any rooms that, and seniors in any rooms that have those kind of carpeting that we use in the police and all that. It's the same exact commercial stuff. We have to move to laminated flooring. They're also much easier to clean. They're to fog, all that stuff. I'm just putting it out there. It's not my expertise, but I got a report recently, so just sharing that with you more than anything else.
It's a very good point, and it's something that we did talk about. So we will look at those other options. I mean, I know that a while back there's like carpet tiles, but I don't know. That's probably evolved since, you know, that's what people were doing in medical centers and stuff. It is a bit of a sound issue. But the carpets are like kind of toxic. So we can look at those other options.
Yeah, again, I'm not a fabric material expert, but just as part of jobs, we learn things, just sharing that and worth looking at.
Karen, if I may jump back to water for a second.
Yes.
One thing we forgot to mention that is on the list there is, and I'm going to be mentioning it next week in the town, so I want to make sure I brought it up here. The town's going to be preparing to release the bid documents for the McCarthy Drive improvements that we're doing out there. And if you remember from our earlier presentation, that has a facet of a village water main replacement, which that cost is going to be borne by the village debt. And that's why that's in here. And we're estimating that water main replacement facet to be about $700,000 right now. It's about 2,000 linear feet of 8-inch ductile iron pipe that we're going to install, replacing the existing water main that's in McCarthy right now.
Wow.
All right.
Was that not?
I'm sorry?
I'm talking to myself. I'm trying to find it. It says that not in the budget already, because I'm trying to find
No,
it.
it's in the budget. It's just, we just
Okay.
skipped over it. And so he was circling back to make sure
Got
that
it.
you drew
Thank you.
more attention to it.
Great.
No, for me, it's just bittersweet. We've been talking about the, you know, water system, the new filtration plant or water treatment facility for my entire tenure as mayor. And just a couple months after I'm gone, you're going to be breaking ground, and I'm not going to get a fancy shovel and a nice picture with you guys at that beautiful location. So I wish you all the very best, and it's the right thing to do for Ossining, and I'm glad to see it's finally moving forward.
You're welcome to join us.
Thanks, Omar.
Well, we will be inviting the appropriate people. I think, if I recall, you're the person that started the conversation about it.
I think I've just had the opportunity to learn a lot about water from Paul and Andy over the last 6 years, and I'm a big champion for the great work and investment that we've been doing in our water infrastructure system.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to see it moving forward. Thanks.
I just want to loop back to the generator issue. We do not have a backup generator here for the server. We have 1 hour if power goes out. So that's a problem for working from home if power goes out. The other thing, if there's a widespread outage, then we may not be able to work at home anyway. So one of the things that we should think of when we're looking at this is what, what's the essential backup that we need here for the server, and then what other options do we have to set up emergency workstations in either the op center or the rec center or other buildings. I think that's what we have to think about, and we have to think about what those essential needs are during an extended power outage.
Okay, thanks for that, Karen. I would also ask, is it necessary for the servers to be in that building? If there are other buildings that are definitely going to have generator backup because they contain other emergency services, and could create other additional temporary workspaces as needed for staff if there was, like you said, widespread outages.
I will have to get back to you with the answer on that.
Thanks. I mean, the other concern is, no building can go in, it does become a potential hazard if there's going to be freezing of water lines and such in a building. So, you might want to, I'm not suggesting that there shouldn't be some sort of backup generator power. I like the idea of it being more flexible if that's an option with the portable generator, which is what I always thought was the backup plan for 16 Croton.
It may be the better option, and then you may be right that we're budgeting too conservatively on the sort of space improvements here. So these are things that we can adjust, but I think the objective again is just making sure that we're protecting the building to the degree that needs to, that's practical and essential, but not necessarily. I agree that there's other places where work can be done too. So for the type of work that's done here.
Thanks. And thank you, Paul and Andy. Is there anything more for water, DPW, and sewer for tonight that we haven't covered?
I don't think so.
I think that's it.
Great.
All right. Well, Dale and Karen and Paul and Andy, is there anything that you wanted to leave us with this evening, or is any final questions or comments from anybody from day 2 of budget meetings?
No, thanks for the continued support.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.